This is the highlight of my week every week.
It's fun. We have a good time doing it. I'm wearing blue this week because this is, I think,
It
blue.
matches your outfit. All right, Jacob. So let's help fantasy managers out a little bit, and let's give them some must starts, some guarantees, some locks, right? So, Chicago heading over to Caleb Williams. Interesting must start. Quarterback been a little bit inconsistent this year, but seems to be finding his way in Ben Johnson's offense. What makes you so confident that Caleb Williams is a must start this week?
Yeah, more than anything else, the Giants have been fairly weak defensively against quarterbacks, both through the air and on the ground. And we've seen Caleb Williams have sort of that dual threat potential on occasion. Last week against the Bengals, he had 5 scrambles for 53 yards. Now, again, Bengals are one of the worst defenses in the league, but the Giants haven't been significantly better, and they've surrendered 15 passing touchdowns to quarterbacks this season, 3 rushing touchdowns to the position, 216 rushing yards to the position as well. So, I just think Williams has the skill set needed to kind of give the Giants some trouble. And yeah, his touchdown volume has been sporadic this year, but we've seen, like his game against the Bengals, when he can get into the end zone, he can really be one of those top 5 scoring quarterbacks. So I like trusting him in this matchup.
All right, Jacob, moving on to the New England Patriots and a guy that we've talked a lot about this season that still waiting for that signature moment, that signature game. TreVeyon Henderson, running back for the Patriots, makes your must start list. Well, again, what makes you so confident for Henderson in this spot?
Yeah, so Ramondre Stevenson, this is another guy we're not sure he's going to play. He's got that toe injury, didn't practice last week. We'll have to see what happens with him. But even if he does suit up, I think Henderson has shown that he deserves a role with this team, specifically as a pass catcher. And that bodes well in this matchup against the Buccaneers. Tampa Bay is really, really good against running backs on the ground, but through the air, they've allowed a league high 466 receiving yards to running backs. Now, Henderson's probably a better fit as the receiving back in this situation because even if Stevenson is healthy, Henderson's a little bit more explosive with the ball in his hands. And we saw that a little bit against the Falcons last week. They tried to get him the ball in space on some screen passes. So I anticipate them doing that again. And hey, if Stevenson is out, Henderson played 51 snaps against the Falcons. He could probably see a similar carry share with, Terrell Jennings might get the goal line carries in that scenario, but Henderson as the pass catcher, probably the guy you want in your lineups this week.
All right, Jacob, and last but not least on your must start list, I feel like this is almost something of a gamble with Jamison Williams, but you seem confident in it. You seem strong in it. Why does Jamison Williams make a must start this week?
Yeah, well, first of all, he's playing the Commanders this week. The Commanders have allowed the 3rd most fantasy points per game to wide receivers. But beyond that, there's a narrative play here. Coming out of the Lions bye, John Morton, their offensive coordinator, said he had failed Williams earlier in the season by not getting him enough schemed up opportunities. We saw him targeted 6 times last week against the Vikings. It looks like they're trying to change that. That was I believe, his most targets in a game this season. He recorded 4 catches for 66 yards and a touchdown. Now, is Williams the most consistent receiver in terms of production? No, but his speed and explosiveness makes him a big-time threat against a defense that's just been decimated by injuries. They lost Marshawn Lattimore, too, so they are really thin in the secondary. I think Jared Goff's going to take aim at Williams on a couple of big plays, and he might be able to convert them both.
All right, Jacob, let's head over to your must sit list now. And the Indianapolis Colts are heading over to Germany to take on the Atlanta Falcons. And interestingly enough, is the bloom coming off the rose for Daniel Jones? Potentially. Is there regression here? Who knows? But he makes your must sit list this week. Why should fantasy managers avoid Daniel Jones?
Yeah, you mentioned the possibility for regression, and we saw that a little bit against the Steelers. Now, could that have been a blip on the radar, Joe? It's possible, but anytime you're watching your fantasy quarterback out there turning the ball over 5 times, it's hard to recommend them trusting them the next week, especially in a game against the Falcons. Now, the Falcons are one of the most inconsistent teams in the league. It's like maddeningly so. Every single time you expect them to win, they don't play up to snuff against lower end competition, but I think they're going to be ready for this game, and they have allowed the 6th fewest fantasy points per game to quarterbacks this season. So Jones just has lower touchdown upside than usual in this game. And I'm just worried if the turnovers continue, that's going to just suck away his fantasy value. So I'd sit him this week. He's got to buy the following week. So I'd be looking for a 2-week streamer if I'm a Daniel Jones fantasy manager.
All right, Jacob, let's head over to Tampa Bay. And running back Rachaad White is a must sit this week. Why is he make your list?
Yeah, first of all, we have no idea if Bucky Irving is going to play this week, and we're probably going to find out eventually. We keep thinking that he's going to come back at some point, but he's been out 4 weeks and through the bye, and there's really been no sign of him returning to the practice field yet. So, if he comes back, White's going to go back into that backup role. But even if Irving needs to miss another game, White's going against a Patriots team that has yet to allow a running back more than 50 rushing yards in a game this season. And they've played some good running backs. That includes Bijan Robinson last week. Now, these backs can still do some damage as receivers because the Patriots have allowed a league-high 55 receptions to the position. But I'm not willing to trust a guy like White in this spot when we just don't know that there's going to be a high enough rushing floor. Sure, he could catch some passes from Baker Mayfield, but it's not enough to make me confident putting him in the flex spot, especially on Bucky Irving's back. If Bucky Irving's back, White is absolutely a guy you need to have on your bench.
All right, Jacob, and you want to talk about timeshares of running back? There's another one that's taken over up in Minnesota. The return of Aaron Jones has kind of pushed Jordan Mason down the totem pole a little bit. Makes your must-sit list. Is that the main reason why?
Yeah, it has everything to do with Aaron Jones getting, more of the snaps there. It seems like that at best for Mason is going to be a 50-50 split. And in reality, it's going to favor Jones more so long as the veteran can stay healthy. And then this matchup is one that I just want to caution fantasy owners. It's going to look good on paper because the Ravens over the course of the year have not been very good defensively. However, the last 3 weeks, they've been very good against the run. They've allowed 96 or fewer rushing yards to 3 consecutive opponents. So, when you see that like 20 odd ranked run defense for the Ravens, just know that doesn't reflect how they are when they're healthy. So that's going to make Mason more of a touchdown dependent flex in this matchup than a guy who could realistically have 100 or even a 50-yard game.
All right, Jacob, I got a follow-up question for you regarding the Vikings. Now, JJ McCarthy's back. What are we expecting? I know this is something that we've talked about on the Carson Wentz angle, but what are you expecting from JJ McCarthy, Justin Jefferson owners, Jordan Addison owners? What's the outlook for this Vikings offense moving forward?
I would say it's probably turbulence. You're just going to have to ride with the trials and tribulations of a first-year starter. Now, McCarthy did well to help the Vikings get a win over the Lions, and that was impressive in his first game back from 6 weeks sidelined with that ankle injury. But look, he's a young quarterback. He's inexperienced. There's going to be ups and downs. I thought that Wentz might be a stabilizing force for them. Just, knowing that he was an experienced guy who could distribute the ball to the likes of Jefferson and Addison, but he got hurt at the end of that time, his left shoulder. He really probably shouldn't have been playing through that. Credit to him for wanting to get through that. But that Thursday night game where his last game of the season was really hard to watch. So, McCarthy's going to be healthier than Wentz was, but he's still developing on the mental side of things. I think that's going to mean that he's going to try to target Jefferson and Addison a lot. So I think they have relatively high floors. I just wonder what their ceilings will be, especially if McCarthy has some of those dud games where the team just really can't score.
All right, partner. It's time to welcome back Big Take Jake and thought you had an ace in the hole last week, friend. Marvin Harrison Jr. prediction came up just short, but you're getting closer to wrangling that cattle or something. All right, Big Take Jake, what you got for us this week, partner?
All right, partner. We are going to be rolling with another young receiver in Rome Odunze. Now, he could not spring the Hoosgow last week in an easy matchup with the Bengals. He recorded 0 catches. There ain't no way Caleb Williams is allowing that to happen to his deputy again in a nice matchup against a Giants team that has allowed the 4th most receiving yards to wideouts this season. Now, expect Williams to look Odunze's way a lot early. That'll lead to a bounce back from Rome. I think he's going past his season-high total of 128 receiving yards, and I will hang my hat on that one, Mr. Rivera.